What if I told you that a backyard mechanic, armed with nothing but a piece of scrap aluminum, humiliated General Motors' entire engineering department? And he did it not with cutting-edge technology or million-dollar prototypes, but with a simple modification that had the engineers at GM laughing when they first saw it. This is the extraordinary story of how a humble mechanic named Tommy Big Red Morrison, with nothing more than a machinist's instinct and a tiny piece of homemade metal, quietly revolutionized engine design, shifting the way Detroit thought about airflow and engine performance. Let's go back to 1987 in Lebanon, Tennessee. It's a Saturday night at the Highland Rim Speedway, and the air is thick with tire smoke and the sharp smell of high-octane racing fuel. The scene is set for a showdown between the big-budget, factory-backed race teams and a small-town racer whose entire racing season is funded by a budget that's barely enough to cover a single catering expense for the corporate teams. In the pit area, you see high-end, professionally sponsored race cars, sleek with shiny bodywork and high-dollar parts. Meanwhile, parked on the other side is Tommy Morrison's beat-up Chevrolet Monte Carlo, its primer gray exterior looking as though it just rolled out of a demolition derby. Morrison, a 42-year-old machinist who works 60 hours a week at a local tool and die shop, has only $3,000 to spend on racing for the entire season. To put that in perspective, the General Motors factory teams spend more on catering for a single race weekend than Morrison's entire budget. But this isn't just another David versus Goliath racing story. This is about real-world experience colliding with theoretical engineering. Morrison's story is one of practical knowledge, honed through years of trial and error, in contrast to the world of highly funded, precision-engineered race cars backed by Detroit's best minds. This is where a small-town mechanic who understands airflow from feeling it with his hands proves that sometimes the best innovations come from people who are actually turning wrenches, not those sitting in climate-controlled laboratories running simulations. Tommy Morrison didn't just beat GM's factory-backed teams on the track, he exposed a fundamental flaw in GM's understanding of engine design. To appreciate the significance of this breakthrough, let's take a step back to the muscle car era of the 1960s. During that golden era, General Motors dominated American motorsports with their big block V8 engines. The formula was simple. More displacement equals more power. Want more horsepower? Build a bigger engine. The 396, the 427, and the legendary 454 engines were brute force solutions to a physics problem. But as the 1970s rolled in, everything began to change. Fuel economy standards, emissions regulations, and skyrocketing insurance costs put an end to the era of the big block. By the early 1980s, GM's engineers were faced with the daunting task of squeezing more horsepower from smaller engines. At the heart of their strategy was the small block Chevrolet 5.8. Introduced in 1955, this engine had been refined over decades, becoming the centerpiece of GM's automotive legacy. By 1987, GM's engineers were confident they had perfected the small block V8. They had cutting-edge technology at their disposal: wind tunnels, flow benches, and the first generation of computer-aided design systems. They employed a team of PhDs in fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, and aerodynamics. They had multi-million-dollar testing facilities and cutting-edge simulations to model every possible airflow and combustion scenario. They believed they knew everything about engine performance. But what they didn't have was Tommy Morrison's 30 years of hands-on experience working with engines and his ability to listen to them. Morrison had been racing since he was 16, building his first car, a 1955 Chevy, with the help of his father in their barn. He never went to engineering school and, in fact, barely finished high school. But Morrison understood engines the way a musician understands a violin. He could hear it, feel it, and instinctively know what needed to be adjusted. It was a skill that could only be developed through years of hands-on trial and error, learning by doing, not by studying theory. By 1987, Morrison was racing a 350 cubic inch small block engine, which was common for the street stock class at Highland Rim Speedway. This engine, on the surface, looked like it should have been enough to compete. It made a respectable 385 horsepower on the shop's ancient dynamometer. But it had one major issue: throttle response. Coming out of the track's tight corners, Morrison would push the accelerator, and for a split second, nothing would happen. There was a dead spot, a hesitation before the engine would respond, and then the power would hit suddenly, breaking the rear tires loose. This problem wasn't unique to Morrison. It was a common issue in racing engines at the time. However, the factory-backed cars, with their sophisticated tuning and multi-million-dollar budgets, didn't have this problem. Morrison spent weeks trying everything. He swapped carburetors, experimented with different cam profiles, adjusted the ignition timing, and tested various air-fuel mixtures. Nothing worked. The bogging issue remained, robbing him of precious seconds every time he exited a corner. He felt frustrated and defeated. But the solution came not from high-tech simulations, but from good old-fashioned intuition. One night, as Morrison stared at his engine in his garage, he had a breakthrough. He looked at the intake manifold, the aluminum casting that funnels the air-fuel mixture from the carburetor into the cylinders, and something clicked. Morrison had spent his day job working as a machinist for industrial air compressors. He understood the dynamics of airflow, especially how turbulence created inefficiencies. Looking at his engine, Morrison could visualize the path the air-fuel mixture took. When the air rushed through the carburetor, it hit the floor of the intake manifold's plenum, creating turbulence before having to make a sharp 90-degree turn into the runners that led to the cylinders. Morrison realized that this sudden change in direction was causing the bogging issue. It wasn't the engine's lack of power, but the poor airflow dynamics that were choking the engine. The solution was so simple it was almost unbelievable. Morrison sketched an idea on a napkin, a spacer between the carburetor and intake manifold to allow the air-fuel mixture more room to transition smoothly. The next day, he went to work, using a chunk of aluminum billet to machine his first prototype. It was just 1 inch thick, with a 4-hole design to match the carburetor's butterfly valves. But Morrison didn't just drill straight holes. He carefully machined a taper inside the spacer, gradually widening the holes from the carburetor to the manifold, creating a smoother flow path for the air. When Morrison installed the spacer on his engine, he immediately noticed the difference. The engine idled smoother, and the response was quicker. But the true test came on the track. During the next race, Morrison noticed that the dead spot was gone. The power delivery was smooth and predictable. He went on to win his heat race by 3 car lengths. In the feature race, he finished second, his best result of the season. But Morrison wasn't satisfied. He knew he could improve it further. Back in his garage, he refined the design, creating an even more complex internal geometry for the spacer. In his third version, Morrison added velocity stacks, small, trumpet-shaped protrusions inside the spacer that he believed would help organize the air-fuel mixture and prevent fuel droplets from pooling. He had no way to test this hypothesis, but he trusted his intuition. And on Labor Day weekend in 1987, Morrison took his newly refined spacer to the Highland Rim Speedway for the season championship. The competition was fierce, with factory-backed teams from GM, NASCAR, and other professional racing outfits. But Morrison's homemade spacer would prove to be the difference. When GM's factory engineer, Michael Strayer, saw Morrison's spacer during tech inspection, he laughed. Morrison calmly explained the design, but Strayer dismissed it, stating that GM had tested every intake configuration imaginable. If spacers worked, Strayer said, we'd be using them. Morrison didn't respond. He simply shrugged. The race would speak for itself. During qualifying, Morrison turned a track record lap time, shattering the previous record by nearly half a second. The factory teams, despite their superior budgets and resources, couldn't match his pace. In the feature race, Morrison maintained his consistency, turning laps within hundredths of a second of each other. He won by half a straightaway, leaving the factory cars in his dust. The GM crew chief, utterly confused, asked to inspect Morrison's engine. When he saw the spacer, he could only shake his head in disbelief. There was nothing special about the engine, except for that piece of aluminum. The word spread quickly through the racing community. Other racers began visiting Morrison's garage, asking him to machine custom spacers for them. Morrison started making them for $50 each, just enough to cover materials and his time. Each racer who used his spacer saw improvements in throttle response and drivability. It wasn't about massive horsepower gains, but about consistency and control. 3 months later, Morrison received an unexpected visit from Michael Strayer. This time, Strayer wasn't laughing. He wanted Morrison to make a batch of spacers for GM's engineers to test. Morrison agreed and made 6 spacers with slightly different internal geometries. Strayer paid cash and made Morrison promise not to tell anyone. What Morrison didn't know was that Strayer had taken the spacers back to GM and conducted a series of tests. The results were staggering. The spacer improved throttle response by 37%, and it also showed better fuel distribution and more consistent exhaust gas temperatures across cylinders. GM's engineers were stunned. They had never considered part throttle performance when testing engines, but Morrison's spacer had forced them to reconsider everything. GM quietly began incorporating the principles behind Morrison's spacer into their production intake manifolds. The next year, GM's intake manifolds featured smoother transitions, larger plenum volumes, and a design more similar to Morrison's spacer. They never credited Morrison, but the racing world knew the truth. What Morrison had done with a chunk of aluminum changed the way GM and the entire automotive industry thought about airflow and engine dynamics. It wasn't just about peak horsepower anymore. Engineers began focusing on improving part throttle performance, something that would benefit everyday drivers on the road. The aftermarket parts industry took off, with companies like Holley, Edelbrock, and Wilson Manifolds producing spacers based on Morrison's design. Tommy Morrison didn't get rich from his invention. He didn't patent it. He didn't seek fame, but his work changed the world of racing and automotive engineering. His legacy lives on in every carburetor, spacer, every modern intake manifold, and every engineer who recognizes that innovation can come from anywhere, even from a humble mechanic working in a small-town garage. Morrison's story is a testament to the power of intuition, practical knowledge, and the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. Morrison passed away in 2019, but his influence on the automotive industry is undeniable. His spacer, once dismissed as a simple chunk of aluminum, became a symbol of the power of grassroots innovation. Morrison's legacy is a reminder that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places, and that the best engineers don't always come from the most prestigious universities or the biggest corporations. They sometimes come from a humble garage, driven by intuition, experience, and the desire to make things better.